Hello, welcome back again. And hopefully this time around it's going to be better than what we've had. We couldn't hear engineer Buba Galadima, but we tried again and I could hear him. And hopefully when he's back, we will hear him this time around. Hello, sir. Can you hear me now?
Sorry. Yes, I can.
Yes, you can hear me, obviously.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because we looked forward to having you so much that I couldn't even imagine that it wasn't going to go as planned. Thank you for coming on Africa Rise. For the people who joined us earlier, please come back and remember to share this broadcast, create watch parties, like and follow us on Facebook and YouTube, and also Instagram. So here we have Engineer Buba Galadima. We're all here because we are a fan of his. And of course, he's one of the very few politicians in Nigeria who have been able to stand up to the government of the day to speak the truth. So welcome, sir.
Thank you, Susan, and kindly extend my apologies to our listeners who had earlier hooked in, but unfortunately we had a technical hitch. This is a misplacement of technology.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. Hopefully everything is going to go well from now on. So,
thank you.
So the topic for today is failure of leadership in Africa. And a few days ago, we had some in the DRC, in Mali, there's been a little bit of unrest, protest, because people are demanding, the young people, and some people who are not so young are demanding certain things of the government, and so on and so forth. Just to start with, I want you to take it from the angle of the failure of leadership in Africa. Because some of us of my generation put the blame on your generation for, frustrating the development of Africa on your generation. And so please go ahead and talk to us about the reason there is failure in leadership on the continent of Africa.
Well, thank you very much, Susan, and I'm delighted to be on this program, and I hope I will live up to expectation. I don't know where I belong, really, whether I belong to your own generation or to the generation of those in power. It depends on what I say or what I do, then that would now classify me to which group really I belong. First, Susan, and to our listeners, I would want to say that the major problem with the leadership failure in Africa is stemming out of 2 or 3 things. The first issue is that most leaders come to power without really getting prepared for such an onerous responsibility that would be placed on them. Secondly, most of our leaders, especially those that started from the 70s to present day, were people that really got leadership on a platter of gold, whether being supported by godfathers or being supported by communities. Therefore, they had no nationalistic approach to leadership. Thirdly, the major issue which we have all over Africa is that most of our leaders have not been properly prepared educationally and have got a plan or a program or a vision for their own community. If leaders are not exposed, if they have not traveled across the world and see how the best practices in other countries of the world is working, they assume that whatever they do is the new normal, because most of their supporters or their countrymen cannot differentiate between what is right and what is wrong, what is obtained in America, what is obtained in DR Congo, in Mali, or even Nigeria, where we say that we have the best brains in the world, and you find us all over the world excelling, even militarily, or even our policemen that were sent to other countries to do policing normally receive world acclamation for doing what is right. But whenever they come back to Nigeria, you find out that the Nigerian factor creeps in. And what is this Nigerian factor, for example? Tribalism, religious bigotry, sectionalism. Where does one come from? Factors that would continue to haunt us in Nigeria and indeed in most countries of the world, or in most countries of Africa. So where do we go from here, Susan?
That's a big question. Where do we go from here? So where do we go from here? If we hold your generation accountable for the failure of leadership in Africa, what will someone like you say concerning the younger generation, the youth of Africa, who have failed to hold accountable their governments?
Well, let me say something, Susan. Young people like you, or people of your generation, do not know what is right or what is wrong, in that they have not seen the best practices while they live their life. So for them, new normal, for them, what is right? And what is this new normal in Africa? Corruption, bigotry, sectionalism, nepotism. These are the kind of things they grew up to know, and for them, this is what is normal. But they are not exposed, they are not traveled, therefore they have no basis of comparison between what is normal in their country and what is abnormal in other countries. Because, for example, a lot of public officers have been accused. For example, let me take Nigeria. Have been accused of high profile corruption. But to the ordinary person, that is normal, because for him, it is better his brother is part of the chop rather than exclusion. Once you can steal and share, you are the best man. They didn't know that when you steal more than you need, that when you steal more than your own share, more than your community's share, you are depriving other people of progress. You are depriving other people of development. And mostly these monies, for example, are stolen and stored in other parts of the world to grow their own economy, instead of you investing this money in your own country to create employment, to give education, to give health services. Take, for example, a point of discourse going on in Nigeria today. Within this COVID period of 3-4 months, the Niger Delta Development Authority had spent 82 billion naira of Nigerian money just to buy what they call the palliatives or recharge card. But effectively, what had happened is that the money was shared. Now, should the government try to put these culprits on trial, the very people of Niger Delta that were shortchanged will now come out and say, leave them, these are our children, these are our men, these are our this, these are our that, forgetting the fact that if that money put into the development of Niger Delta, had been put to create employment, had been put to create health services, Niger Delta would be a Dubai of Nigeria.
Absolutely. Over 1.5 billion naira gone off during the COVID time for crazy reasons that even the biggest fool will understand that that's not possible. You know, this is such a shame, and it is high time that as African youths, we understand that simply because a thief is from your home doesn't make it right. And the sooner we begin to understand to hold accountable, regardless of where the thief is from, these people who steal our commonwealth, that nothing will change. And we would have also failed ourselves and future generations if we continue in this with this attitude of protecting the thieves because they are from our home or our houses. Well, I want to ask you, sir.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I'm trying so hard to hear what you're saying. The sound is so low, but I'm gonna make the best of it. It's not your fault at this point. I don't think it is.
Thank
so,
you. Thank you.
I mean, how can elected leaders be held responsible for failures and insecurity that is a major problem on the African continent right now?
Let me go through, let me come back, address corruption, then address insecurity. In the first place, everybody knew in Nigeria that certain appointments, for example, of this government, ran counter to their professed antecedents. For example, the character in Niger Delta that is causing this problem, for example, the spending 82 billion naira of Nigerian money for an unforeseen project. Everybody knew that person was a chief executive of a state and was accused of corruption, of stealing 350 billion Nigerian naira, meaning 1 billion US dollar. Such a person was never brought to justice, and instead, because the government of the day wanted his support for an election, they cleared him, washed him white, and appointed him a minister. Everybody knew that such a character will never change its color. And this is exactly what is happening. People are not appointed into positions for what they can do to add value to the system, to add value to development, to add value to employment. People are simply appointed because they want to be used to rig election. Now, this corruption that we so much talk about, for which we've been looking for solution, government upon government, in Nigeria is what is leading us to insecurity. Because what is meant for 200 million people will be stolen by a group of cabal and converted to their own personal use. So you cannot create employment, you cannot create development. And once there is no development, building of roads, as you can remember in Germany, in the 1940s, after the World War, people were asked to dig trenches kilometers ahead. And later on tomorrow, another group of people will come and bury that trench just to create the psychology in people that there is dignity in labor and that there is no free meal. Whatever you do, you have to work for it. But in Nigeria today, for example, or in Africa, you find politicians talking about we will provide drinking water, we will provide electricity, we will take people to education. I mean, we will give education. That is not the work of the politician. The country should sit as a matter of restructuring and say, where do we want Nigeria to be in the next 20 years? Once they are agreed, we go back to our community, choose those people that will be our policemen, that will be our eyes in the parliament, to make sure that what we have agreed to make Nigeria in the next 20 years is actually done by any government. Giving water, electricity is a foregone assignment of government. Protection of life and property, creating jobs to engage the youth is the responsibility of government, because once the youth have nothing to do and they are idle mind, the devil's workshop. This is what has led into insecurity. There are no schools even monies that are shared monthly from Abuja to states, to local governments, are being held in between by governors. Therefore, some local governments never see this kind of funds. Therefore, the youth are left in limbo. The youth are left helpless. There is nothing they can do except to create a job for themselves. This is why we have banditry. This is why we have Boko Haram. This is why we have IPOB. This is why we have OPC or whatever you call it all over the country. This is our problem because our leaders never sit down to prepare for governance before they come on board all over Africa.
Right. Thank you. There's a viewer, Don Picasso. He says we are invariably, unanimously abating corruption by protecting corrupt politicians, which I absolutely agree. For instance, let's take Tanzania, Rwanda, and even Ghana. I mean, these are African countries who somehow have been able to put their act together, and there is some form of development in those countries I have just mentioned. Now, a lot of people make excuses for countries like Nigeria and other African countries that have failed in leadership to bring about meaningful development, and we blame it on colonial masters. Yes, I know that there is an interference from the Western powers all the time in our polity, in everything that concerns Africa. But how is it possible, though, that we can truly have a fair and a democratic Africa if we're unable, regardless of the interference of these world powers in Nigeria, especially because a lot of people say that until Nigeria succeeds, the rest of Africa will continue to struggle. So how is it possible that Nigeria is still where it is, blaming it on every other thing that we blame it on, but Rwanda, Tanzania, and Ghana seem to be making a headway?
Well, Susan, let me say something of interest to you and to our viewers. We can never see a meaningful development in Nigeria, or indeed in majority of the countries of Africa, without having a proper, transparent democracy. You saw that whoever gets into power wants to perpetuate himself forever. Forever. Nobody, all of them are paying lip services into what you call democracy. There is no freedom of choice, because it is only in Africa that even in communist Soviet Union or in communist China, you don't see people voting with the military wielding guns, trying to coerce them, trying to intimidate them, or change figures at collection center. Until we get our acts together, those of us who are at the receiving end, or let me say those of us who call themselves common people, unless we stand up to really enshrine democracy, and until the countries of the West, the free world, gives us the necessary support by sanctioning those who tramp on democracy, so that the people can have a freedom of choice. Once you have a freedom of choice and you can vote out a leader due to non-performance or certain acts that is inimical to the constitution of the country, and you bring in a person who also, if he does not perform, you change him. By the time you change 2-3 sets of governments, let me assure you, Susan, that whoever comes in for the 4th time will sit up and will follow the constitution, because he knows that next time during election, he can be thrown out. Therefore, I always think and I always talk that we must do a one man, one vote, irrespective of who is there. You don't perform, we vote you out. You perform, we vote you back for you to complete your tenure, if it is a tenure of, for example, 2 terms. So this is why the leadership, when they get there, because they know that nobody can remove them, because they have the power of incumbency, they can use the police, they can use the military, they will disregard the opinion of the people, they will regard what is meant for the people and convert everything that is meant for the people to become their own personal property. This is where we find ourselves. Those of you who are outside the shores of Africa, you have a responsibility to assist us. Talk to the free world that the greatest thing and legacy they can leave behind for us is for them to support the freedom of choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with you, sir. This program is about promoting everything that is African. But unfortunately, every time we bring up any topic, you would hear embarrassing situations being, spewed out. Twinkle Oruwariye, who's watching as well, says also Kenya and Ethiopia are making waves. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kenya and Ethiopia are one of those that I failed to mention. I agree. And so is it possible though? I was thinking, can the African Union not come up with some kind of consensus and say that there should be an age bracket that you're allowed to run for the office of the president in Africa? Because we have seen that for us to be able to bring about any meaningful change, we somehow have to do away with a generation of people, because these people are tainted, they are corrupt, seriously corrupt, and it's almost as though you're trying to teach someone to use a left hand at old age. How can we begin to reform these people? Isn't it time for young people in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s to take over the reign of leadership in Africa? And if we don't come up with some kind of way to make sure we keep these people away of your generation, we might not be able to achieve that. Do you think that the African Union should come up with some kind of parameters that will guide the people that go into these offices?
Well, Susan, let me share your sentiments and emotions over the issue of age. But because you've been away from Nigeria for a long time, you may not understand. Today, as I speak to you, for example, in Nigeria, the most corrupt public officials and governors are young men of your generation. Go to their states, go to their ministries and see. The issue is not about age. The issue is about how prepared are you for leadership? How much exposure you as an individual has gotten to be a leader? What is your manifesto that we can hold you responsible up to? Because leadership is not about the knowledge of one individual. It is about the ability of the individual to assemble those who can assist him run a free society, a corrupt-free society, a developed society, and giving people opportunity not based on sentiments, primordial sentiments of religion, sectionalism, tribe, where one comes from. So for me, Donald Trump is one of the oldest people to become American president. Is he performing well? No. The answer was an absolute no. But you have got other people. Macron is a young man running government in France. But because the institutions and the system is such that he cannot on his own, because he's in power, change that system. That is why France, irrespective of shortcomings, is still moving in the right direction. So forget about the issue of age. Talk about the issue of how prepared is that man that we are going to put in position of authority. Because we have seen the young men here all over, very young people all over, very close to me in Abuja here, Niger, Kogi, and other places. They might be the worst people that you have as governors today. Absolute dictatorship. And let me tell you something. At my age, when you give me power, do I have time to be looking for beautiful ladies like Susan all over? I have no strength. But the young man would really be enjoying himself and forgetting about the people themselves that he's supposed to work for. A lot of issues. I don't want us to go personal. I'm sorry.
Well, you have a point. You have a point. But the leaders that we have today, most of Africa will tell you that the leaders that don't want to go back to the confines of their home and enjoy the power that they have as presidents and so on and so forth, most of them came into power very, very young. How come the beautiful young ladies on the streets were not a distraction so much? So some of them were more effective as young people than they are now as they get older. I mean, the wine is supposed to get better as it gets older. I don't know why in this particular case it's not the truth.
Susan, you acquire more wisdom as you grow older. And one of the best presidents in the African continent is Paul Kagame. Do you know his age? He's much, much older than me. And he's one of the best African leaders. Nana Akufo-Addo is 74 or 75. He is one of the best African leaders that we have. We have young men all over dotted on the African continent that are misbehaving. So the issue is not about age. The issue is about preparedness and seriousness and the will to do what is right.
Also because we are not patriotic anymore. Once upon a time when we were growing up, singing the Nigerian national anthem and saying the pledge every morning was almost like the way we do with when we say our prayers and we give worship to God in church. That's how it felt once upon a time. But nowadays, even the politicians don't even know the words of the national anthem. They can't even remember what the pledge is. There is no patriotism. And one of the reasons there is no patriotism is because people do not find equity and justice. When there is no equity and justice, this is the reason why you have factions. You have IPOB wanting to, you have the people who are fighting for secession of the Biafran people. And then you have now a group of people talking about the Oduduwa and so on and so forth, because we lack justice and equity. And do you need to go to get some kind of training, leadership training, to be able to dispense equity and justice?
Equity and justice is what it ought to be, Susan. But I want to tell you something that may not even occur to you. The successive Nigerian governments, 2, 3 back, up to this one, have even banned the teaching of history in our schools. So if there had been a leader, a charismatic leader, that had worked for his people, maybe Nnamdi Azikiwe, or maybe Chief Obafemi Awolowo, or Sardauna, or Tafawa Balewa, or Aminu Kano, or Ibrahim Imam, or Joseph Tarka, or Chief J.S. Marere, or whosoever, they don't even know. A graduate cannot tell you who was the last premier of Midwestern Nigeria. They didn't even know that there was a region called Midwest. It is what they see. I said that what is happening today is the new normal as far as our young men are concerned. So how do they eulogize what is good? Because they didn't even know that somebody had earlier been a leader and he selflessly worked for what we are, got some of us into school, and we have children that are now educated. educated. They didn't know the basis of how they came about that education. This is where we find ourselves. And politicians are selfish. When they go into the boardroom, when they go to executive councils of states and at national level, and they share the loot of the people, they never remember that they are Hausa, they are Igbo, they are Kanuri, they are Yoruba, they are TV, they are Bade, they are Nupe, they are Mumie, they are Igala, or they are Igbira, or they are Okun Yoruba, or they are Bini. They never remember. They sit down to share our money, like what I've spoken on Niger Delta. They don't give a damn about tribe. The Atam, the Anang, the Oron, the Ijo, the Kalabari, the Urobo, the Ishekiri, the Bini, the whatsoever you call them, the Ika, they sit down and share their money. They never quarrel. If you hear them quarrel, it's because somebody has thought that he has not got what he deserved to have gotten. That is when quarrel will always come in. So the issue of patriotism is simply not there because we have no indices of measuring what is good and how to reward good and reward what is bad. No punishment. And we have to create such a situation, or else some of us will be gone. You people will be left to your own. You don't know about the past, let alone the middle. You can't think of the future. Every Nigerian, most Nigerian politicians, 99.9%, they only think of themselves rather than their constituencies or their community. If you hear them talk about tribe or religion, because they did not get their own way. Once they get their own way, they forget about all these primordial issues.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I'm going to just take a comment from one of the viewers. His name is George Jumbo. He says, Buba Galadima, thanks so much for being so truthful. Without government being truthful, dedicated and honest to itself, we cannot make any headway. Only honesty and transparency can set Nigeria free. We should stop using the blame and victim card to cause unnecessary distraction. I agree. And I also have Alexander Egedeye, who also says he agrees with Buba Galadima. Most youth are not ready for leadership. Some who have such opportunities are disappointing. Yes, this is the same thing as the blame game. You know, we when we talk about the youths, we forget. It's almost as though we're saying when you're pointing one finger to someone, the rest of your fingers are pointing back at you. Who are these youths? We are the youths. Who is going to be responsible for bringing about change? With your analysis so far, it doesn't look like there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Definitely, there is a glimmer of light because Nigerians are becoming conscious. Nigeria abhor corruption. Nigeria abhor bad leadership. I hope you can just remember how General Buhari became the president of Nigeria in 2015. The kind of charisma, support, and popularity he commanded. Today, but anything that no Nigerian living in Nigeria wants to hear about. So it means we are coming of age. We are now trying to distinguish performance. Not because the man comes from your tribe, but what has he done on the ground? For example, this government came on the premise of three things: fighting corruption, fighting insecurity, creation of jobs and employment. There is none of them that had done even 10% to the satisfaction of Nigerians. I am one of those who brought the man to politics. We lived all the best parts of our life to fight for him to become president. They are now a big disappointment. If you talk of corruption, there has never been any government in the history of Nigeria that is as corrupt as this government. And that stealing of life, because nobody believes that the president has got the sophistication to even detect corruption or punish corruption. You can't even get to him, let him understand that Mr. Buba Galadima or Susan West is corrupt. Investigate them. The mere fact that you say that, you are an enemy to the government. Look at what is happening. Insecurity. In other civilized countries, the service chiefs could have been replaced 10 times over for non-performance. Yet we are here. So the most important thing is that we are now creating, Nigerians are becoming more aware of what is good for them, more aware of what they want for themselves, more aware for what they want for their country. If we go through this phase, you know that Nigerians will start asking questions, and from questions, they can do what is allowed under the Constitution to voice out their frustration, to voice out their anger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, in Congo, in the DRC the riots or the protest that is going on is just because they haven't yet put in office these people they're protesting against. This is just a whiff of some kind of information that certain people are going to be taking over leadership positions of certain government agencies, and they're on the streets protesting that they don't want these people there. Do you think that in Nigeria right now, with the Magu case, with the Akpabio and Nunez drama, with so many others, do you think though that it's not going to be swept under the carpet? There's some kind of drama again going on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I don't think you can hear me. I think he's lost sound because he's not able to respond. Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me? Oh, not again. So much for IT. Okay, we're going to bring him back on. I think if he went off and came back on, we will be able to sort out the audio issue we're having. Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Oh.
He's back on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh, Lord. I think I have to take him off and bring him back on.
Hello? I can't hear you, Susan.
Oh, thank goodness. I couldn't hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello? Susan, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. So maybe you come off and come back on it.
It's okay.
Sorry guys, one of the issues we have to deal with with this technology that is available to us right now. We're going to try and see if he can get back. Yeah, in the meantime, Tamunode Priye Micah says in Nigeria, there is serious need for the reorientation of the youth, else they will always remain gullible. Absolutely. There has to be a reorientation. Absolutely. Without that, we're going nowhere. And Twinkle says, Buba, thank you for being so sincere. This government is a total failure. They said change, and yes, we have changed from being upside down. Now we are up, downside up, whatever that means. Downside up, upside down. We will get there. What we're doing right now, having these conversations, are not just noise making, but when Buba Galadima mentioned that there is a change happening in the minds of the youth because they are becoming more aware as opposed to before when they didn't know anything. Now, because of these kind of programs, we're having young people wanting to know more about the history of Africa. They want to know more about their history, their background, and they're beginning to come into that realization and awakening that they are not too young to take responsibility of leadership and hold accountable the government of the day. I'm waiting to see Buba Galadima back on my system. I haven't seen him yet. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Thank you guys for sticking with us because it's so important. You see, these issues that we tackle on this program is not a joke. It's so important. And that's the reason you're still here, even with all the wahala we face. Don Picasso says, AU is painfully powerless union. Well, AU is painfully powerless at this moment because there is interference. What we need to know as young people on the continent of Africa that is the fact that it is true that some countries on the continent are making headway, even with all the challenges that we face according to neo-colonialism. But the truth is there is some serious interference that make the AU also come across like some bulldog without teeth, you know. But the more we keep talking about these things, the more we create awareness, the more we throw more light on issues and educate ourselves, the more we can better understand when to fight and when to look for other ways to solve our issues, you know. I'm hoping that he's able to come back. I still haven't seen him. Give me a moment. I will try to contact him again. It's a shame if we have to end today's program on this note, which I don't want to. If I can get him to come back to give his final thoughts, that would be great.
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. We're
Yeah.
just gonna do a quick one before the
Yeah.
IT decides to misbehave again. Just like I
It's
was
okay.
saying before we lost sound, I
Yeah.
was saying that in the DRC, what is going on is they haven't even yet put the people in positions of authority, yet they're out there on the streets protesting that they don't want these people. Do you think that in Nigeria, with all the drama going on with Akpabio and Nunye and Magu and so on and so forth, that this is not going to be another one of those issues that they just dramatize and sweep under the carpet and yeah and amen, the rest of Nigeria just moves about like nothing even happened, and we just make jokes about it because we're fond of making jokes about serious issues. It is nice, it is good to make jokes, to make light your burden, but when we have issues where we just move on to the next one, what do you think that the young people and even not so young people should be doing or saying right now so that these issues are tackled and not just swept under the carpet?
If you Google me on the Sun of Saturday yesterday, front page, and then I think page 37 and 39 or so, I have comprehensively dealt with this matter and opined that what they are doing is only a drama, and in the next few days to come, everything will be swept under the carpet and they forget about all of it, and that nothing will happen to Magu. And I don't think this president is in a position to sack Akpabio for what most Nigerians believe he must have done. They are not in that, they don't have that will and strength of character to do that. But the most important thing and the lesson out of this is that young men and of course Nigerians must take their destiny into their hands according to the law of the country. It is our fundamental right to protest when our governments fell short of our own expectation.
Absolutely.
It is constitutional. Nobody could stop us. They will try, but they cannot succeed. How many security people do they have? Both the military, the police, and other paramilitary, compared to 200 million Nigerians. If we decide to say no is no, enough is enough, and this must stop.
Oh.
If the Nigerian people do not take their destiny into their own hands, power is like oil. When you put it on a surface, it encroaches. It acquires more territory. The more we relax, the more they become bold, make nonsense of us, disregard us, and do what they want to do. Nigeria is too rich. Nigeria has got potentials. Nigerians have got resources, but yet we don't have the blacksmiths to galvanize those resources to the benefit of our own countrymen. Let's forget about tribal affiliations. Let's forget about where we come from. Let's forget about our religions. What we need for now is who can salvage Nigeria from the hands of these corrupt Shylocks.
Corrupt
and
Shylock,
nobody gives you power. We must change the system democratically, because 3 years that is left for this government, for some of us, for most Nigerians, it's like you are calling for 1 million years, because they can destroy the country in the next 3 years to the extent that you need 100 years to put it aright. So it is our own responsibility. Nobody from anywhere can do it for us. We are the only people that can change our destiny and change our lives. When we get to that stage, the outside world that I had spoken about will have no alternative to come and sit all of us down, mediate, and negotiate where we can get the basic minimum for the good of our people.
Right. We're almost out of time. We have a few more minutes to go. I'm just going to take a quick comment from one of the viewers. Godsin Odu says Nigerian government are faced with so many political misdemeanor due to tribalism and nepotism and greed to the detriment of the populace and impoverishment of its citizenry. Hence, no meaningful development. We need a change of attitude politically and socially, which is in tune with what you've just said. Until we get to the point where we go beyond religious affiliations, tribal backgrounds, and so on and so forth, we can't get anywhere. And it's high time we stop being too afraid, like you said. You know, we're so scared of them using the military against us. We're not asking for war. We don't want to see war. But these are also human beings who also have fears. So we will use whatever human being fears against these people who don't mean well for us on the continent of Africa, especially in Nigeria. And Blessing Etum Obole says, Nigeria is rich, yet we have nothing because of corruption. Absolutely. And one of the things that we do, though, is we when we talk about corruption, we talk about corruption as if corruption is some kind of is carried out by some aliens. We are all reaping the dividends of corruption. We have all at some point shared the cake of corruption. The only difference now is we weren't aware about what the implications of our actions or inactions were. But today we see things a little differently. And so, sir, just for the road, what I want you to talk to the African youth, the Nigerian youth, talk to them as an elder, as a father, as a politician, the way forward, the attitudes that have to change and the way forward for us.
Susan, let me tell you the bitter truth and let our children and the youth take a cue from what I'm going to say. It is very easy to accuse leaders and all the people of misdemeanor. But we, the young men, are we sure that we can be trusted? Any young man that can do exam cheating can also steal billions of naira if he has that opportunity. Any young man that is entrusted today, you entrust a young man with a flourishing business to manage. The first thing he tries to do is to convert that business into his own personal property. So as we accuse others, we must also look at ourselves and change our attitude. Nigeria can be guided by the old and those in authority, but definitely a lot depends on us, the followers, especially the young people. When you take more than you need, deprive your neighbor of what he can have. And once he doesn't have, be rest assured you cannot sleep with your two eyes closed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, just before you go, I'm going to take a little read again from one of our viewers. Hector George says, let's allow the young people to lead. There are competent young leaders in Nigeria. Who is going to allow the young people to lead? The young people have to take the bull by the horn. You prove yourself. You prove yourself What is it that the young people have that they can bring on board and say to the people of Nigeria that this is me and that I'm capable, that I have what it takes to take reign of public offices, and just before you go, I'm going to get into trouble if I don't say this. My husband says, I must say to you, his name is Charles. He says, I must say to you, he's your biggest fan. And if I don't say it, he's going to be very mad at me.
Thank you.
Yes,
kindly greet Charles for me.
Fan. He's one of the reasons why, by the grace of God, we're having you here today. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Engineer Buba Galadima. I will actually plead with you that I will that I have you back on this program another day, because some of the things you were saying, I was struggling to hear you. The sound today is not good, but I will make sure that all the devices and gadgets that we use are taken care of, so that next time you come, I'm able to, we're able to take advantage of the moment that we have with you. Thank you so much for coming on Africa Rise.
Thank you, Susan, and greet Charles for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
He will hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, fans of the program, supporters of this program. We appreciate you. We appreciate you like you don't want to know. Please follow us on Facebook, like our page on Facebook. Go to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and follow us also on Instagram, and put the notification bell on all these places so that when we do go live, you are the first to know. Thank you so much. Today we had Buba Galadima, and we talked about the failure of leadership. Unfortunately, the equipment or the whatever it is that was the problem, somebody suggested, who was it? Someone suggested that it's the Nigerian government interfering with his system because they don't want him to talk. I don't know if they will go that far. Anything is possible. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And it is my pleasure always to bring these people that we bring on the program to talk to us, to reinvigorate our passion, our love for our continent, Africa. And of course, to teach, educate, bring more insight to especially young Africans who don't know what their background, what their history, or where they're coming from. Because only when we know where we're coming from and who we are, can we then begin to demand certain things as our rights. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Take care.